So we first instigated this piece of research in 2022 before our conference. As you probably remember, or maybe it's a dim and distant past now, it was after COVID, and a lot of organizations were moving to online proctoring specifically because they couldn't do things in a in-person environment. So it was a sort of a big sea change as far as online proctoring is concerned. So you will see that some of the sessions are, some of the questions rather than some of the responses are COVID related, but that's why. As much as possible, we've kept the same questions. We have added a few as well, but what we didn't want to do was radically change it. So we're in a position where we couldn't compare 2022 to 2024. So some of the questions, we're actually comparing 2022 to 2024, so you can see the change in responses from people. So if I move on. So I'll talk a little bit about the research, what we've done. Broad areas, how online proctoring is used within organizations. There is also information about how it's being implemented. The big thing is this research was all done from a user perspective. We're going to present, but we've decided to leave it open for a bit longer. This is very much from a user perspective. The other thing to add is I don't know who the respondents are. So I don't know the organizations. One of my colleagues, Tracy, put the presentation together, did the research. So I've seen the results, but I don't know the organizations. What I can tell you is this year, we had about 60 organizations respond compared to 40 people in 2022. So we had more people involved. And it's across a spread of organizations in the, academic, university, professional space, etc. So there are a cross section of organizations that have responded within the research. And then the other thing was we kept it very, very simple for organizations to respond. So it was all tick box questions rather than free text response. So big things really as far as we're concerned. Like I said before, online proctoring. I think some organizations had a bad experience. This is sort of the anecdotal bit, because they were implementing online proctoring very, very quickly. They'd never done it before. They weren't really geared up for it. A lot of organizations were newly setting up in that field. So they were sort of, I won't say rushing into it, perhaps it wasn't optimal in terms of creating the solutions. So one thing I would say is that you've got to bear that in mind in terms of the responses that you get from people. But thanks a lot to everyone that helped out by this, by the way, but I'll talk about that at the end. So comparison to 2022 to 2024, like I said before, we will be sharing the report with you. It's really used as a tool for you to be able to compare, allows you to help making decisions. We're not talking about one particular vendor or one particular technology or one particular mode of delivery. From that perspective, we're totally impartial, but we hope that it provides you with some insights into the decision-making processes, things that you should think about to help you make better, more informed decisions. So the first question, obviously, do you use online proctoring? As we said before, 60 organizations in 2024, 40 in 2022. So 50% more respondents. So essential to meet candidate COVID, as you would expect, much higher, 78% compared to 67%. COVID obviously forced you to do. I think what that figure there is showing is that because of the pandemic, organizations implemented it and they've kept it. So the fact they've got it in place, they're happy with it, it's working as far as they're concerned, so they're stuck with it. Accessing new markets, less. I would have thought that might have increased, but obviously that's not the situation. Creating new exam products, so this is new opportunities, new markets, new exams delivered in a new way with online proctoring that might not be available previously. For example, it could be a shorter exam that doesn't lend itself to being delivered in a physical center. So I think from that perspective, you can see that it's perhaps slight change in terms of the information, but I think it's probably nothing that would be not expected, to be quite frank, in terms of the difference between 2022 2024. So how is it used? So this is a length of exam. That was just the point I was making for. So we asked the organization, how long are the exams that you're delivering? There are some organizations that are doing very long exams. Now, that doesn't necessarily lend itself to online proctoring if you're sat at a desk in a location for a long period of time. All right, it might be the fact it's in a home environment or more comfortable environment than a test center. But I think what's happening is organizations are sticking with what they might have delivered in a test center and are sort of replicating it on online proctoring. I would like to think that in the future, people would think, well, 4 or 5 hour exams, do we really want that online proctored in that? Should we build in a break? That sort of thing. So I think there might be more of that moving forward. But as you can see, most of the exams still are 1 to 2 hours. That hasn't changed significantly. It would, as you'd always expect with online proctoring, but also typically it's what we call linear delivery formats, i.e. people take an exam, it's a series of questions, one after the another. So it's not necessarily people are doing adaptive tests, which potentially could be shorter. It's just that they are shorter exams. So perhaps one area we can look at exploring in the future is, what are organisations planning in terms of an exam length? Are they looking at changing that in terms of the making it to a more modular, shorter exams? I know organisations have been talking for many, many years about micro credential, at least 15 years that I know, and probably before that, about micro credentials, i.e. having more modular exams that could be stacked up or bundled together to create certifications or something. But we're not seeing a lot of that, to be quite frank, at the moment. So how many exams are you delivering via online proctoring? Again, we don't know the organizations that are involved, but as you can see, there's some organizations that are only delivering 1,000 exams. Other organizations, so really most organizations are comparatively small volumes. Obviously, there are some delivering over 100,000 exams. As time progresses and we get more respondents, we might actually make that much more granular. As you can see, in 2022, we kept it up to 50,000 exams as a maximum. Now I've got it over 100,000. So it could be something that we will change that number perhaps next year in terms of the volumes that people could be delivering. I think as well, because we've got a much bigger membership over the last sort of 6 months or so since we actually first initiated this research, we've got a much, much bigger membership. So we're actually probably reaching to a much wider audience. So we're probably in a position now to get a much wider response. I mean, 6 people is still good, but it'd be great if we could get 160 people involved in the research, because I think it would give us more variety of both smaller organisations delivering exams, but also larger organisations delivering exams. So we did ask this in terms of what we're trying to understand here was the comparison between online proctored rather than in-person or classic test center delivery. And you can see in here in 2022, 52% expect their use to increase. I think it's all very self-explanatory, this basically in terms of the changes from that in terms of online proctoring compared to others. What it's showing, though, is that sort of a hybrid approach is here to say it's not that organizations who perhaps previously used test centers are saying, okay, then now we're going to deliver everything online. It's more the situation where, okay, we might be delivering more online proctored exams, but we still do have that sort of classic test center delivery mode as well. Again, pandemic might have had an impact initially, and the fact is that everyone had to do online because there wasn't another option, but online is still sort of a mix in terms of that in terms of the delivery mode that people are using. So how many years have you been using online proctoring? Again, this is very self-explanatory, but we have got organizations that have been using it for more than 5 years, etc. Still some early adopters. As we would expect, those organizations that started using it have not stopped using it. And I think that's probably one of the things that we can say, people who have adopted online proctoring are still using it. However, as the previous slide indicated, it's part of a mixed economy in terms of delivering both online and in centres. Although anecdotally, I do know there are organisations that only deliver online proctored exams, particularly in the sort of like the certification, IT certification type market, which tends to be a little bit more US dominated, where I know a lot of organisations just delivered online proctoring exams, but our audience is very much more of a mix of exam boards, professional, etc. Again, we have got some US respondents. Perhaps that's something for us for next year to increase the sort of the range of people responding. I'm just going to explain a little bit about here. There's different sorts of online proctoring being used. So you've got AI proctored entirely. In that situation, what you've got is you've got AI that's making the decision about whether someone should be stopped taking the exam because there's been an issue. Is there for a number of reasons. One is to protect your IP. So in other words, to prevent people, taking pictures of your item bank, sharing it, etc. But also to make sure that people aren't cheating on the exam as well. So with the AI version, it's predefined what's acceptable or not. You've got the AI is making the decision about whether someone has cheated or not. So that could be a decision's made, fine, that person cheated, they stop the exam. They're no longer allowed to continue. Now, it sounds quite harsh, but it is used in a number of situations. I think particularly we had a session about 3 or 4 months ago, often in the academic sector, where they're very prescriptive about what you can and can't do, and the issues that might occur. Sorry, that's it. I don't know if there's an appeal process. It's not my program. So that's the AI only. The record and review is where the exam is recorded. You've not got someone live proctoring the exam. What's happening is after the exam has been finished, the AI is reviewing that exam, or it could be an individual reviewing that exam to make sure that people aren't cheating or copying exams, etc. So in that situation, it wouldn't work if someone was, it only really works in exams where there's one exam paper, everyone's taking the same paper. Because obviously, if you did a record and review and then you realise someone was taking pictures of the screen, copying all the items, because you're looking at it afterwards, you wouldn't be able to stop. So it's very much relevant for those organisations where people are, just taking a one-off exam. So the obvious might be an academic exam, in a university or someone like that, where someone's just taking the same exam. The live proctoring is where you've got someone who is physically watching someone take the exam as you would in a test centre. In a test centre, you've got people that in there watching you take the exam. You've got exactly the same. You've got people watching people on screen take the exam. There's a different ratios, different organisations, 6, 8, 10, 12, what people who are, different candidates being watched at the same time. I know different organisations have different numbers that they use, but that's a live proctoring. There are sort of hybrids. You've got sort of like AI assisted live, where you've got AI that perhaps is flagging up that something might have happened, but ultimately it's a live proctor that's making a decision. So that's still sort of live proctored, really, because a human's making the decision on that. The AI is just a tool. Typically, the benefit of a live proctored exam is it gives you a lot more flexibility, because you can decide what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. If someone, coughed or suddenly looked up at the ceiling, etc., that might be deemed unacceptable by AI, a human's got the potential to say, well, I don't think that's relevant. I think that's fine. We're okay with that. So it does tend to be a bit more flexibility with the live proctoring side of things. So this is supplier selection and usage. As I said, we don't know who's responded to this, so we don't know the organizations in question. So this was the question we asked when you first set up. What did you think were the most important criteria when selecting a partner? And then we asked them, right, post-implementation, once you'd actually done it, what were the key criteria? Again, this is very self-explanatory. As you can see before, the technical capability in 2022 wasn't deemed to be much more important in 2024. Whether that because people didn't know the questions to ask or not, I don't know. After the deployment, you can see people were sort of, it was important. Pricing. So as you can see, 2022, people weren't bothered so much. Actually, 2024, it became more relevant, whether that was because they didn't have a choice, so we don't care what it costs, we've just got to do it, and we didn't have we weren't in a position to do anything. The candidate experience was deemed to be more important in 2022 beforehand, but actually you can see the candidate experience is coming out significantly as being the most important thing. Well, of course it would. You'd hope it would anyway. In other words, what's the candidate's experience of being able to, getting involved, confirming who they are, taking the exam, etc., the problems they experience, that whole candidate experience is the priority. as you would hope. I won't go on about the other stuff. The other one I was going to draw out one here was around the support. Again, before and after, people didn't think it was that important, but actually that comes out and that stands out for me as a support. Now, we didn't drill down to the specific support, but I can imagine the support issues they're talking about are people's computers not working with the online proctoring because they've got something installed, or perhaps it's locked down or something like that. So the support is key. When someone's trying to confirm their ID, typically it's photo ID, someone showing it to a screen, someone validating, yes, that's you. Is it those sort of issues as well? But one thing that people, when they have deployed, they realize that that support component is important. And of course, the key question is who's doing that support? Is it your technology provider, or is it you as an organization that's having to do that support? So very important. You can make your own conclusions from the other data, but I think those are the key ones for me: the support and the candidate experience.
Hi, Pat. We've got a question from Valley,
Yeah,
who's
please.
from Bretta. So he says, we have a long-standing experience with test administration in centres, which has contributed to the quality standards of assessment over many years. However, due to COVID-19, we had to switch to remote proctoring, potentially sacrificing some level of quality. Are we now at a point where we can say that remote proctoring offers the same level of confidence as the test centre-based evidence we had prior to the pandemic?
That's a very long question, but I'm going to paraphrase it because basically is now that people are using online proctoring, do we think it's as good as test centers? I hope that's what you were saying. It's really interesting this because online proctored is almost seen to be the alternative, as in, oh, it's not as good as a test center, but it's got some benefits and potentially is a bit cheaper, etc., because you haven't got a physical location that you've got to maintain. First of all, I would say is just because you've got a test center does not mean that's totally secure. There is this sort of misconception that, oh, if it's got a test center, of course it's secure. I know a number of cases where that's not the situation. I can think of several examples in the UK. I think of other situations in the US. Just because it's a test center does not mean it's secure. The fact that you employ the people or you're using partners, etc., it's still not 100% secure. Online proctoring is also not 100% secure. It's one of those you've got to mitigate your program and what risk is appropriate. So the fact is, I know with AI tools, there's a lot more potential for people to have, avatars that are taking exams. But then for every time someone's coming up with a cheat, there's actually another technology that will stop that cheating, etc. So it really is also this constant arms race of no matter how secure you make the exam, there's always going to be people that are going to try and cheat the system because there's value. So I think from that perspective, I don't think nothing is 100% secure. There's also always potential for cheating to go on. It's just how you minimize that as much as possible and then mitigate it. So for example, if I was doing a medical licensing exam, I would put that as a top of security, that you do everything you possibly can. Whereas if you were doing something that was perhaps, an exam that was a module as part of a much bigger course, etc., and there were multiple opportunities to retake it, that might be seen as being a lower risk. So it's really a question about managing that in terms of what your requirements are. And it's that sort of cost benefit. You can make an exam as secure as possible, but one, it's got to be cost effective. It's got to work technically in your environment. So if you've got students all over the world in developing countries with poor internet, you might not be able to have multiple video stream. You might even not be able to have one video stream. You might be having to do a series of still shots. So you've really got to take it in the context of your program and what's appropriate for that and how much risk you're willing to take on. But just to say, test centers, online proctoring, nothing is 100% secure. They've just got their relative merits, and it's just understanding that. I hope that answers the question. But I can't see a response, so I guess it did. You can always ask me again later if you want to. So this is a criteria when selecting a technology partner. I'm not going to read through those in terms of the trends, etc. You can draw your own conclusions from those. So we did ask this because we know that there's organizations out there that, one, have developed their own solution to online proctoring. So they're their own customer, it's an internal customer. Others are using one organization that's got a test drive or an item banking, and they're plugging in another online proctoring provider. And then there are organizations that do the end-to-end, etc. So we're just trying to understand a bit more about the ecosystem, about what's involved. I like the fact 2022, some organisations, or I think it was probably one organisation, didn't know, but then perhaps it was seamless as far as they were concerned. It didn't really matter who was providing it. So you can see it's still sort of 50-50-ish split. So some organisations using some organisations to do end-to-end, others using organisations that are providing multiple vendors, basically. It's relative merits. You might find out that just because someone's got a test driver and has got a great item banking tool, their online proctoring service might not be fantastic, or it doesn't meet your needs. And then you can get someone else that perhaps has got a better solution. However, the downside is you then got multiple vendors. The challenge of multiple vendors is it that at what point is it whose responsibility? So I think it does open up. So it's not don't do it, but you just got to be aware of who's responsible for what. Because what you don't want is things to fall between the gaps in terms of, oh, that's not the platform or the test driver, it's the online proctoring company. So it's really just understanding the fact that no problem doing it, but it's just a slightly different considerations that you have to make. Like a lot of organizations, for example, are using their LMS with online proctoring rather than being using a bespoke vendor. Note here, this is in pounds. We weren't as global as perhaps we should have been in 2022 when we put this. So everything else is in dollars. Now, we could have changed this into dollars, but it would have totally changed the numbers, in all honesty, because obviously 16 to 20 could be in one band or the next one. So we haven't changed it. So the caveat to this is in pounds, but everything else is in dollars. So all you need to do is just bear that in mind. So we're asking what people paid for remotely proctored exams. Again, you can see it's a broad cross section. As an organisation, we're not saying what you should and shouldn't pay. We're not talking about collusion on pricing or anything like that. All we're saying is that this is a range of prices that people are paying for exams. Yes, Adam, you've got a question.
Yes, so this is from Maya. She says, "Hi, I'm Maya from Indonesia. Thank you, Patrick, for your interesting presentation. I would like to know whether your study also covers the integrity and reliability of the online proctoring. In my institution, we have such online proctoring, but sometimes integrity can be an issue, as the students might do some tricks where they are able to cheat in different ways. Regarding the integrity and reliability, how can you maintain the quality of the test outcome? Thank you."
Okay, really good question. We didn't ask people a question on that. The main reason being, although the responses are anonymous, so we're not looking as who said what, etc. Again, our organisation's prepared to say, actually, we've got a real problem with people cheating, etc., and it's a big of a concern. So we haven't got that included. However, what I would say, and this is probably a topic for a future session within this special interest group, if you have got online proctoring, because technology is changing so rapidly, there are opportunities for people to be able to cheat on exams, or malpractice might be a better word than cheating, because there's different things that people can do. So it does go on. I think the key question is how you try and mitigate that, to the point I was making before. I don't think you can change it. I must admit there's some research, and I can't remember what it is, and it was just about cheating in academic exams generally. I'm not saying that people don't cheat in other exams. That was just where the data was available. And it was really, really high, the percentage of students that would teach on an academic, a university exam, if they thought they could get away with it. So people's desire to cheat is actually quite high, and their acceptance, again, like any statistics, including ours, you need to be careful about what was a sample size and everything else. So back to the point, I don't think you can stop people cheating. I think what you can do is, as technology improves, is you can sort of mitigate that as much as possible. I mean, potentially, I think the opportunity for online proctoring is greater, because I know people are concerned about people using, AI, GPT, etc., to cheat on exams to submit an essay. Well, actually, if you were getting someone to write an essay on a computer screen, and the screen and the desktop was locked down so they couldn't access other technology, well, you get around the fact that they can't use GPT to write the essay for them. So there are ways that actually online proctoring could help counteract the impact that AI has. Again, there's always other things, like I said, people using avatars to take exams, but then it's not perfect. You have other AI pick up the fact that people are using avatars, etc. So I don't think there's an easy answer to that one, but we could probably do a session maybe with the online proctoring group talking to specifically about how we can counter some of the cheating that goes on, and perhaps have it more of a discussive format rather than having a, saying what's the answer, but we can talk about what the answer could be. So anyway, so back to this. So this is the prices that people paid, etc. So we did it per hour. Again, bit of a schoolboy error from that perspective, because we weren't thinking, we just think about an exam rather than people charging per hour. This is the 2-hour exam, as you sort of would expect. It's more expensive because the exam's twice as long, etc. Although in theory, if we compare it to sort of 4 and 6, if it's AI proctored, it shouldn't really necessarily be any more, because it's not involved, maybe it's a fraction more of server time, which is pennies, etc. So AI automated has the benefit that it's a simple fee, irrespective of how long it is, more or less. I'm sure there might be exceptions, I don't know. Record and review, again, becoming a little bit more expensive, and then the live proctored is over a huge cross section in terms of pricing. As you can see here, we've got the option over $50. It's not insignificant. You would sort of expect that in a sort of a certification high stakes exam, as opposed to perhaps something that in a different context was deemed to be less high stakes. Again, all we're doing here is just showing you there's a range of prices. We're not saying what you should or shouldn't pay, because there's so many variables. What we were trying to do when we did this was just to provide an indication for people. And what we're planning on doing is hopefully getting more people, like I said, next time, that will provide with a much more variety in terms of the people responding. Okay, so we've actually shown the comparison here. So it's the same information, just in a slightly different format. Again, I've already talked about this. I won't go into it in great detail. You'll see this in the final report. So this was for people, so those planning to implement online proctoring, or those with no plans to implement. So when we went out to the research, we still wanted people who don't use online proctoring to respond. We want to know why they don't want to do online proctoring. So it's still really useful from our perspective to get those people. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, so I think about 11 or 12 people or something like that. So again, what are the most important criteria that you're looking at? Technical capability, candidate experience, data security. That's interesting, actually, because data security, whether it's people think it's not the security of the item bank or the content online that's an issue. Candidate experiences seem to be not important. Maybe we can ask these people again next year when they've implemented it, what they think they are. But those are the factors, the key elements that are coming out that people think are the most important. Okay, so barriers. We didn't ask all these questions in 2022, which is why some of them are blank. We didn't really think it was as relevant. So lack of people just haven't got the resources to do things, even though typically it's a software as a service. You still got to do things from your side. You've got to go through a procurement. People just don't have the resource of doing it. Lack of funds is often a difficult one, because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know necessarily how much it's going to cost. But I guess if you haven't got any money at all, then it is going to do it. I would always say that when it comes to implementing any new technology, there might potentially be cost savings. However, realistically, are you running a dual system? And if you're running a dual system, you don't always get the economies of scale. The other thing I would say as well is that if you are looking at new opportunities, that's a different matter. If you're looking at new markets, new revenue streams, etc., it could end up being cost useful profit centered, because you're doing things. So there's lots of variables involved in that, but it's just interesting to see the issues that people think they have. I'm disappointed, don't know enough about online proctoring. Well, hopefully this SIG and other information we've got will prevent that, so that they'll know more in the future. So those are actually planning to implement. So these are with no plans. This is why they're not doing it. For those that are planning, they want to find the right supplier. Of course, they're still saying they haven't got the funds to do it, but hopefully they're going out to the market asking them. Still lack of people, etc. Don't know enough. So it's sort of very comparable, but hopefully, like I said, people will find out more about what we're doing, so make it a lot easier for them.
Hi, Pat. We've got a couple of questions,
Yeah.
if that's okay.
Let's go for it.
It's from Joanna. Do we have any
So I've lost you,
information
Adam.
regarding user experience? Do we know, for instance, I apologize, Trey, do you mind asking these questions? I'm having some troubles.
That's absolutely fine. Yes, sorry, it's a question here from Joanna. Do we have any information regarding user experience? Do we know, for instance, if knowing about AI proctoring creates stress on test takers? There have been some news regarding people being unfairly accused of plagiarism by AI systems. Is this an issue being raised by test takers?
I haven't come across that. The problem I have with reports is there's probably tens of millions of exams delivered by online proctoring that work fine. One doesn't work, and it suddenly becomes a Daily Mail moment of, oh my goodness, the world's coming to an end, and no one can deliver exams. Personally, I guess it's appropriate. Purely AI proctored, I get there will be situations with people saying the AI was wrong, I didn't do this, somebody else did it. I can't. I can speak in general terms because we actually last year we had one of the award submissions was around people using technology to pick up with people were cheating on exams, and initially they did the proctored exams, some people were deemed to have been cheating, etc. They used the technology to confirm it and said, yeah, we think these people have been cheating. And there was, I can't remember, there was tens of thousands of candidates, and there was maybe 100 or so people that were accused of cheating. And of course, everyone was, oh, well, that's it. And the online proctor, they actually ended up going back and saying to these candidates, we think you might have been cheating. We'd like you to, if you want to appeal, you're more than welcome. And of those, I think only one person actually said, "I know I am going to appeal." The others sort of, no, we don't want to appeal against it. So I think that they're, again, back to the point, nothing's perfect. Some people won't be happy, but you know what? Paper-based exams, people are still have the same issues where they're not happy because they felt they were disadvantaged in some way. It didn't work very well. Test centers are stressful. Are they more stressful than being able to take an exam at home? Just using I think there's probably certain situations where that was used. I can't see that being necessarily used outside the academic sector where you might have lots and lots of candidates taking the exam lots and lots of times, but very, very difficult. And I guess the AI will improve over time, but it's very, very difficult to be able to say specifically about that. But again, there's lots and lots of exams that are delivered very successfully with online proctoring. There's always going to be issues. Unfortunately, it's just mitigating those. But back to the candidate experience, maybe we can drill down a bit more next time and saying what are the issues. But what we're trying to do is make the research not too onerous for people, to make it a bit more tick box rather than, but maybe what we can do is add a field and people to put in specific examples of challenges that they've had, whether it's about, candidates don't like it, technical issues, etc. So maybe we can drill down a little bit more and find some more information on that. I think, Tracy, there was another question as well.
Yes, there is. Yes. So this is from Ragini from India. Does your research address how organisations ensure the integrity of proctors, particularly regarding the potential misuse of test content by these individuals? And we've also got a couple of more questions supplementary to that.
Simple answer is no. We didn't go into that detail. However, I think that there's another SIG that we're setting up around an international standard on use of ICT delivery assessment. So in other words, e-assessment, there's an international standard that I'm involved in. And one of the things we're talking about is the roles of people within the whole sort of e-assessment ecosystem. And one of those is a proctor. And one of the things is there should be some sort of what I would call, certification or something for the people involved in the proctoring. And I don't think it's just about, obviously, you don't let people to cheat, you don't take bribes, etc. But I think it's more of a cross section of capabilities around, a bit of empathy, customer service, dealing with people, communication skills, etc. So I think there's a lot more of that sort of soft skills involved. But a bit back to the point, and I've worked all over the world in assessment, test centers aren't perfect and are open to fraud. There's always those situations where individuals, but I do know that there's some organizations who are proctoring the proctors. So I do use the word proctors all the time. So you've got a room with room with your people who are doing the proctoring, and then they are being watched by proctors. But there's also other things that you can do in terms of, random sampling of, someone drops into a proctor session to make sure the proctor's doing their job properly, So I think there's things that you can do to mitigate that, but I don't know if it's a big problem. And if it was a problem, I wouldn't even know if people would always know about it. Because unfortunately, if people do, encounter fraud, they necessarily don't want to tell people about it. They sort of want to sort of sweep it under the carpet, etc. But that's in all situations. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Just say thanks to Jeff Chapman, who's posted a link to a report about online proctoring in higher education. So we'll include that in the follow-up email. Couple more questions. One from Adarsh. I'd like to know if there are any early signs of how the advancements in AI in the last few years is impacting the proctoring space, such as reducing costs, stricter monitoring, etc.
Again, anecdotally, I think it certainly has. There's a lot more online proctoring companies out there who are using technology, because if you're using technology, you don't need lots of people. So if you're not using lots of people, it is going to be more cost effective. And it's how you use that technology to effect. So when you're talking about using AI, for example, it's not just one factor, as in, has the person picked up a phone or is the person talking? It's often it's a range of things. So it's, people lifting their head, moving their eyes, talking, picking up a device, and their keystroke. So they suddenly going really quickly. That looks a bit strange. So I think it's much more of a holistic perspective. So as technology improves, it's picking up the things that are okay, then yeah, this does look suspicious. A decision needs to be made. So as with all the advancements in AI, I think is going to be more and more technology. I don't think we'll get away from people making those decisions in the short term. But I think there will be a lot of improvements, whether it's from one of the existing organizations or it's another organization out there that's new, that's creating something. So the barriers to entry for being involved in online proctoring are not huge if you're using technology as the main tool to be able to do that. So I think certainly more. And like I said, it's a bit of an arms race. So for every technology that people can use to potentially compromise an exam, there'll be other organizations using technology to stop that happening. So I think it'd be very interesting. The amount since GPT 3.5 was the sort of the big time that AI has been around for a very long time. But the fact it was when OpenAI came out with GPT 3.5, which was just optimized for chat. That's why it was Chat GPT. But GPT itself has been around for a long time. And the capabilities of that are impressive. I know there's lots of other tools as well, other organizations doing other things. The fact that it was affordable as well, so it was very cheap to be able to use AI, was a compelling thing. Organizations have had it previously. It was probably, we'd call it more machine learning, where it was using large data sets to identify trends, things that might happen. That was probably really expensive to do, and you had to deliver a lot of exams to be able to get that sort of data. Now you don't even need that. Basically, you can run your own models. You can create a lot of things with AI to improve the process. Personally, I'm not saying test centers will go either. I still think there's a place for them, but certainly having AI, or I mean, I'm saying this, I'm not being facetious, but why not have a test center and you're using a proctored session, but you're actually using online proctoring, but in the exam center. So the exam center takes out the possibility of fall with the person in the room. They're there, they can notice things at a bigger level. Actually, you're doing people in the room are being proctored in the room online, and then you've also got someone else in the room watching them as well. So you might find it as those models, but it's a lot easier just to have one person in the room than 10, 15, 20 people physically in a room checking that exams are going properly. So I still think, yeah, so technology is the answer, really. It really is going to be used more and more. Very exciting.
Question for Prashant, which I think you've answered most of this, really about sort of, AI in the proctoring market and whether that trend is growing. Also a question in terms of, it would be interesting to know how the pricing details are sourced or mapped.
We literally ask people a question saying, right, because it is anonymous, I know I keep saying that, it is anonymous, we actually put bands in place because we didn't want people to say, oh, we pay X dollars, as in a specific amount. We pay $15 an hour or $13 an hour, whatever it is. So we just put it in bands, and that was specifically because we didn't want to, give people to get too much information, so enough to provide something useful without drilling down. So like I said, I don't know the organizations and their pricing and how much we respond. Tracy did that, so she knows, but I don't.
Thank you. More questions as well. Pat, do you want to carry on? We'll just pick up the questions at the end.
Yeah, we could do that. That's fine. Yeah, I think it's just because when we were doing slides, it was a lot easier to be able to talk around a particular slide. So, I mean, we just put some key points. Again, this was the, I say final thoughts. I would certainly, when you're going through it, look at demos. I know that sounds really obvious, but experience it yourself. Look at the candidate experience. Is it seamless? It's the whole candidate experience, from registration, validating their ID, checking in to take the exam, booking the exam. Is it a seamless process? It's not 50 steps and it's really confusing, to when they take it, how they engage with the proctors, etc. I think there's so much more that can be, done to make sure the candidates have a as good an experience as possible. I mean, here's an obvious thing, and I don't know if all organizations are doing it now with AI. Well, actually, it should be easy to chat using AI with any candidate in any language. So you don't have to necessarily have English. If you can type in one language, it's translating it in real time into another language, so that you can actually communicate with proctors in any language, not just English. So it might make it easier for organizations to be able to deliver anywhere in the world and support people better in their native language, for example, and vice versa, the candidate can. So it's little things like that that perhaps are going to make it better for candidates, that overall experience. I think the biggest challenge is probably technology. So I think that in terms of the devices, making sure they work, etc. But anyway, that's one of the reasons why we're here. At least if you know what the challenges can be, you can address those. So I just shut that down. Again, we've got case studies on our website, etc. Understand AI proctoring. Don't dismiss things because you think it won't work. Oh no, that wouldn't work for us. Look at it. If you decide it's not relevant or it's not appropriate, that's fine. But try not to make the decision beforehand about what's appropriate for your program. I know a lot of organizations still like test centers because they still say, oh, our candidates won't like it. And it's like, really? Based on what? It's just an assumption, perhaps based on. So think it through, understand, and then look at all your options of what's available out in the market. One thing we are going to do is we're going to build up more resources about online proctoring providers. We'll have that information on our website. And of course, we've got our sponsors. We've got a lot more information about the online proctoring they offer. Again, already covered this off, etc. Look at pricing options, make sure what's appropriate for you, make sure they can support you as you need to, candidate experience, etc. I am going to rush over to this one because I do want to make sure we have time questions. So we are going to make this an annual report. First of all, if you have got any ideas. Oh, right, Trace, you've got a question.
Well, actually, it just drops into this, actually. So Ragini sort of said, how can we contribute to the development of the standards you're working on? So it could be something just to build into this question.
So two things. If you want to get involved in the international standard, please let just email at the moment. We will have a page on the website soon, admin@eassessment.com. Sorry, operations@eassessment.com. There will be, it'll be on the last slide anyway, which we will be sharing, so you can see that. If you want to get involved, that's great. What we've done is that the EAA is now a category C provider. Sounds very impressive. What that means is that as an organization, so I'm one of the editors of this standard, but what it means is I can go out to anyone within our user base and get input from them, and they can then feed back into that standard. Again, we don't want people partisan who just want to, promote their own technology. You've got to have a sort of more holistic view. But if you're interested involved, please let us know. It's going to take several years. It's not going to happen overnight. And what we're trying to do is make it more into like a process document. So rather than technical specification, you need to have this server with this size. It's more, here's the process you need to be able to do. And included in that will be online proctoring, but also test center delivery. And it will cover professional certification exams, workplace, K-12, and academic. So the entire spectrum in terms of organizations using it. So yeah, please get involved in that. The research, we are going to do it every year, so please get involved. If you want to have any questions, etc., what we might do is maybe the beginning of next year, because we will try and do it sort of in the run up to the conference, is we might end up saying, please, if you've got any ideas, any thoughts, please let us know. We want to keep the research as simple. We don't want it to be take some hour, half an hour to do, etc. We want it to be able to respond in 5 minutes. And we can promote that and share that with as many organizations as possible to get them to respond. I'm also, obviously, our June conference, some of you might be familiar with it. I would like to get like an online proctoring zone at the June conference. So we talk about online proctoring at our conference all the time. Of course we do, because it's relevant and important to people. I would love it if people are interested to say, well, why don't we have, one of the rooms on one of the streams just focused on online proctoring? Maybe we can get organizations that provide online proctoring to set up in the room, and then we could have people taking pretend online proctoring sessions. So if you think they might be interested in that, etc., let us know. If people aren't interested, we won't do it. Simple as that. There's other ideas that we've got, but I would love to be able to see something. I think sometimes organizations are nervous about demonstrating because in hotels, you can lose internet, there can be issues and whatever. But I think most people understand that actually, if there are those sort of things, it's beyond your control, and it's not a realistic environment in a hotel, in a busy conference when you've got hundreds of people there. But if you are interested in doing it, then please feel free to get in touch. Again, the operations email, if you'd like to be involved either as a provider or you think it's a good idea if you are a user. And then, again, if you want to know more, please just email us. Thanks a lot to our platinum sponsors, PSI, Tau, and TCS. The research we always do independently, but it's the funds that we get from our platinum sponsors that enable us to do this. So all our sponsors are important, and that keeps us running. But the fact that we're able to undertake this, research, it does take time and effort. We are appreciative of our platinum sponsors that enable that to happen. The other thing I would say is that we are going to be doing a vendor research. We have actually already done the vendor research. We were going to produce a report, but I think there's some, we haven't got enough organizations involved. I think we've got 15, but there's a lot more online proctoring companies that we would like to take involved in that. So Tracy tells me that there's probably some key ones that are missing. Again, I don't know. I don't look at that data. So what we're going to do is extend that a bit. And we've actually got a new member of the team, Debbie, who's just joined us yesterday. And one of the things that she's going to be working on is going out to those organizations that provide online proctoring to get them to respond to the research. So we are trying to get both perspectives, the users and the vendors. The challenge with the vendors is sometimes they don't like to talk about things. They don't want people to know how many exams they're doing. We're not asking them about pricing, by the way. They don't want to share too much information, but hopefully we can get a better response from the vendors. And what we'll do is we'll be working on that, and then hopefully maybe before the end of the year, we'll actually have that research from the vendors, and that will be going out over the coming weeks to get people to respond. So that is the last slide. Now we have got a little bit more time, 10 minutes, if people have got questions. Tracy?
And yeah, there's one in the chat. There are also a couple of suggestions in terms of questions for future research. So thank you very much for those. We'll certainly build those into our plans. Yeah, a question for Valley. Would the Home Office's recent decision to move away from a decentralized network for language testing management be impacted by an increased use of remote proctoring?
I don't know, is the honest answer. So what was that again? I hadn't heard about that. So what was this then? Say that again. The Home Office's decision to...
Yeah, the Home Office's decision to move away from a decentralized network. Valley, I don't know if you want to hop on and unmute and ask the question.
Sure. Thank you very much. So recently, the Home Office announced that they would not be, for the visa and other programs where they require language test results from different partners like British Consul and others, they would not have that partnership anymore. So they would create their own test that they would administer themselves rather than share that responsibility among different market players in the world. So mentioning that would be a move from decentralized management of test centers to centralized, and it's a question how that would happen. And I was wondering whether the remote proctoring would also be a way to substitute the current arrangements.
I guess it could be. It's whether they're willing to do it. So of course, if now this is just off the top of my head, if it was a UK government, I suspect they would work with. But it's interesting. Would they work with the British Council? Because of course the British Councils have IELTS, which I think is accepted for visa applications. So I don't know is the honest answer. I would be, like I said before, I'm impressed with online proctoring, the capability it has, the potential for flexibility, the fact that anyone in any country could take, who wanted to be able to do that, could go through it, do it online. I think would be fantastic to be able to do that. But whether they will do it or not, I don't know. The key about a lot of these language assessments, there's lots of organizations doing it. It's really robust. A lot of organizations have been doing it for a very long time. So I'd be surprised if the government could come up with something better. But I guess in their infinite wisdom, they've decided that that's the best approach to take. So I'm not convinced myself. So I'll look into that. I hadn't realized that. Any other questions?
I had a suggestion I can mention for the next year conference. If it would be good to kind of have a benchmark study to kind of compare different countries on what level of maturity of assessments administration modes they are, either from the test center base towards the proctoring, or whether they are in either way, so that it would be good to kind of compare the countries in one go.
We need a much bigger sample to do that, but yeah, that's a great idea being able to do that. The more response we can get, the more we can start to compare different sectors, K-12, academic, certification, etc., different countries. So yeah, perhaps that's something we can do. But like I said, we can put more resources and effort into getting as big a response as possible to the research that we do. We just got to keep it simple, though. We don't want it to be onerous for people. We just want it to be nice and simple for people to be able to respond. That's a good idea. If there's nothing else, well, thank you very much, everybody.